I did some research and I learned about this new thing called saddle hunting. And so I specifically went to the Minnesota Deer and Turkey Classic to track down Tethrd. And that's where I met Ernie Power. And he showed me on a demo tree how to saddle hunt. And I said, I'll take it. And so I've been saddle hunting since 2019 and I'm convinced.
Welcome to the Land Trust Podcast, where land, technology, and the outdoors meet. Whether you're a landowner, an outdoor enthusiast, or someone curious about the future of recreation on private land, you're in the right place. Each episode, we share real stories from the Land Trust community, from unforgettable guest experiences to conversations with landowners about their land and why they choose to share it, plus interviews with leaders, shaping how we all experience the outdoors. And now, here's your host, Nic De Castro.
Today, I'm joined by Dan Chumbler, the CEO of Tethrd, the leader in ultralight saddle hunting gear designed to help hunters stay mobile, quiet, and elevated with minimal weight in the field. Dan's no stranger to the outdoor industry. He's held leadership roles at Polaris, Callaway, and most recently, he helped scale MeatEater into one of the top media and commerce brands in the hunting space. Now, he's channeling decades of operational expertise and customer focus into Tethrd, helping shape the next era of innovation in mobile hunting. We've got a lot to cover today, everything from the evolution of hunting gear to tariffs, market shifts, and what it means to lead in a category that's as passionate as it is technical. This episode is part of our Outsides Insiders series, where we sit down with the founders, operators, and insiders shaping the future of the outdoor industry. Before we dive in, just a quick reminder, our guests' opinions are their own, and they don't necessarily reflect those of their company or of Land Trust. Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Nick. Good morning.
Yeah, morning to you too. Well, as we were kind of chatting about right before we hopped on here, there's a lot been going on, of course. We're sitting here May 6th, so we're post-tariff world. And maybe before we get into that, it'd be good, I give a little intro on you there, but I'd love to hear just from the horse's mouth, kind of give a quick, overview on your history in the kind of passion verticals of golf and power sports and now hunting.
Thanks, Nick. I've had a really fortunate career. I've worked with a lot of really fun, incredible brands. I think, when I was going to school at University of Michigan, I started in the School of Engineering because I was good in math and science. And then I realized, no, this is not at all what I want to do. And when I decided I was going to go into business and start in sales, because I like this notion that the harder you worked, the more you got paid, I thought, I might as well sell something that's fun, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to ordinary like consumer products or something. And so first job out of college was with Louisville Slugger. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
you really
Louisville
have
Slugger,
been in like passion verticals the entire time, huh?
Yeah, I really have. And Louisville Slugger is the parent company is Hillerick and Bradsby, privately held in Kentucky. And they had the Power-Built golf brand. So that was kind of the way I got in. But then I worked in Louisville on the phones, kind of in a sales training, customer service role before taking an outside sales territory in their golf division. So it went from there to Callaway, to Polaris, to MeatEater, to Tethrd. And I started in sales and sales leadership. And then when I was at Polaris, I was given the opportunity to actually run some businesses. And that GM experience is what led me to my CEO roles.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you kind of, I was a hardcore baseball player growing up. So Louisville Slugger was one of the preeminent, like iconic brands. But then after my baseball career, I went to golf. So it was very a similar arc there.
Yeah, there you go.
And I too was a sales guy my whole career until I stepped into the role here. But so I guess, MeatEater, you spent a few years there. And we were both in Bozeman at the time. That's how we met. We actually shared a wall with you guys at one point when I was over in that office.
Right.
It was a pretty interesting parking lot. You had Sitka base there, their HQ in that parking lot. And then you guys were there, we were there, and Onyx was in the building in the back. So it was a fairly impactful parking lot there.
And I would see Randy Newberg almost every morning getting his coffee,
getting coffee.
We just nod to each other and he'd go on his way about every morning. So it's pretty fun.
Well, and Mystery Ranch was directly across the train tracks from us. So Bozeman was a pretty interesting place from that perspective for sure. I think things have changed obviously with the acquisitions of some of these independent companies and what's going to happen with all of that. But I guess, I don't know, like tell me kind of the difference between a shop like MeatEater, which was built off of media, whether it be the TV show. A lot of people don't understand that, like, Steve and MeatEater had been around since, I don't know, 2013 or something. He was writing books, and then he did a podcast. But I was listening to that podcast a long, long time ago. And then most people became aware of it, I feel like, when Netflix picked it up and kind of redid all that stuff. But tell me what it's like to go from a brand that was built on the back of media first, whether it be podcast or TV, versus a very gear-centric company like Tethrd.
Yeah. So MeatEater is a really unique and pretty special business model. So this content to commerce model was really enabled when Steve's investment partner acquired First Light. So that was their first gear acquisition. And then when I was there, we acquired a couple other brands, Phelps Game Calls, Dave Smith Decoys. They own FHF gear. But it is a really unique model. But my career has been really in gear. So the media side of the business was new to me. But the good news is I had experts there like Steve and Tracy Crane and others who helped manage that side of the business. Truth is, I stayed pretty focused on the gear side because I knew that there was an opportunity to drive revenues through really fully leveraging the opportunity we have with these brands and converting this large and highly engaged audience into customers. So that's what we did, and I'm proud of the fact that in a couple of years we doubled the business. But it was a very unique model, and looking back, like taking lessons learned and applying them to my experience here at Tethrd, it was really where I didn't do a very good job, frankly, is getting all the very diverse stakeholders on the same page. And the business, for the size of it, was very complex, and so that's what I take to Tethrd is really getting everybody on the same page quickly, which we've done here. Greg and Ernie are the co-founders, owners of the business, and they bought in right away, and then we've upgraded the talent where we needed some help, and that's been really exciting. But I think the biggest thing is getting alignment and buy-in from the group early is kind of what's my media experience that has shaped my approach here at Tethrd.
I'm sure it's difficult to work with people who are, that the MeatEater business and brand and everything was built off of creatives, right? And so, Steve is a writer and he's a creative. I am not a creative. And to then have to operationalize like something that was, an audience was built off of creative passions into operational rigor. I'm sure there's some difficulty there, it's just different personality types and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that was one of the challenges is you really kind of had two camps at MeatEater. You had the media camp and those creatives who were there to just make incredible content. Right. And you could argue they're the best in the world at it. They're really incredible. And I look back on that experience, and I was so fortunate to be able to work with such a talented team. But then you had the commerce brands and the team, like at First Light, for example, another group of really talented merchants that just see the world differently, right?
Yes.
And that's what I talk about is the opportunity to get everybody on the same page. And I could have done a better job doing that. That alignment is so critical that everybody is kind of buying into the mission and what you're trying to accomplish.
So, now you've been at Tethrd now for what, like almost a year?
Just a little over a year.
Okay, I remember. Yeah, it was cool to hear you going over there. For people who don't know Tethrd yet as a brand, just give them a quick little. What is Tethrd?
Yeah. So Tethrd brought what was a fringe style of hunting mainstream in 2018.
Yeah.
So our primary business is saddles, and it's simply a more effective way to hunt from elevation. So
Yeah.
it's lighter, it's more mobile, as you said in the intro. It's safer in that you're connected to the tree all the way up and all the way down, and it's just more versatile. So my connection to Tethrd started when I was working for Polaris in 2019. I had access to hunt a bunch of properties in and around the Twin Cities, and I thought, if I'm going to buy tree stands for every approach
Yeah.
and wind direction, it's like 40 tree stands, and there's got to be a better way.
You take a second mortgage on your house out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did some research, and I learned about this new thing called saddle hunting. And so I specifically went to the Minnesota Deer and Turkey Classic to track down Tethrd. And that's where I met Ernie Power. And he showed me on a demo tree how to saddle hunt. And I said, I'll take it. And so I've been saddle hunting since 2019, and I'm convinced. And so that's when the company launched in 2018. We believe we're the largest in the industry. Saddle hunting has grown. You look at the hunting industry and people talk about hunting's on the decline. Saddle hunting has been a bright spot. And really one of the fastest growing areas of the market. It's like, it's been the craze for the last handful of years. We've grown every year. Our CAGR's like 40%.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so the business has been profitable each and every year. And it's just a methodology that allows hunters. We have probably more archery hunters than firearm, although people do both. And there's three major components when you're saddle hunting. There's a way to get up the tree, which is generally climbing sticks, a place to put your feet, which is a small platform, not like a tree stand, but just a small platform, and then the saddle, which allows you to tether to the tree. And what beyond the lightweight and mobility, what makes the style of hunting so effective is you can shoot 360 degrees around the tree. So it just gives you more shot opportunities. Turns out the deer don't always know where you want them to come, right?
Yeah.
They don't always cooperate. Most hunting accidents when you're hunting from elevation happen when you're getting out of the tree stand or getting into it. And with saddle hunting, by its nature, you have to stay attached to the tree with a lineman's belt or you can't get up. And so it's a lot safer too. And maybe the last thing is it's environmentally friendly. So I can hunt in a spot and you won't even know I was there.
Yeah, you're just wrapping a rope around a tree basically, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really straightforward. So yeah, we started direct to consumer only. And we've since expanded into retail. So we have great partners like Shields and Sportsman's Warehouse, all carrying our gear. And Bass Pro and Cabela's for the first time
nice.
We'll be carrying our gear this year as well.
Gosh, Shields, I love that. They're, I know you can't. I'm not in retail, so I can't piss off any partners. I think Shields is the best retailer on the planet. They are just so good at what they do, and I
they're
think it's
really good at what they do.
I think it's because they're an ESOP company, right? They're employee owned. People, you can feel it. It's a different retail experience, and I know you love all your retailers, so I'll speak to my favorite. Yeah,
you know what though, and we've got a lot of independent archery shops all around the country. These smaller operators who do a fabulous job. The thing that Shields has done that very few have done like it is they've invested in their people and training their people. So you talk about being an ESOP organization, they have an incentive, right? And then they spend money on training. So we go out and spend time with their staff and make sure that they know all the ins and outs of saddle hunting, and makes a difference for customers coming in their stores.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think, so now that people have an idea of that, so you're selling gear, again, as you've been doing your whole career, hunting, obviously there's a big media component, and, again, a MeatEater being one of the biggest. And so, you mentioned content to commerce, which was that kind of that model. Do you think you can go the other way effectively? Do you think you can go from commerce to content, like from gear to then content in a way, or do you not think that works?
We've all seen the evolution of the way people buy and how they're influenced, how their buying behavior is influenced by social media and influencers. So I believe that content plays a critical role in the process. The way we're viewing it here at Tethrd is it's not the primary function.
Right.
It is complementary. Because even in a content to commerce world, it's not linear, right?
Right.
So the guys here have done a nice job creating content. Really, it's been part of their heritage from the beginning. And I give them a ton of credit that they've created a really strong brand and have, significant marketing chops.
Yeah.
We've been doing this series the last couple of years called Hunting Camp, where we'll go to a public piece of ground and bring in, successful hunters, and then just film it for several days and try and capture the essence of what we love about a hunting camp. And that's been really successful. So that's one example of how we're using content to complement our gear and educate, Nick, like your model, what you're doing at Land Trust really is a perfect platform to introduce new hunters to the sport. And we believe that saddle hunting is too. So we're investing a lot of time, money, and energy around creating that saddle hunting 101, like for people who have never done it. How do I get started? And it's people of all ages. So it's, adult onset hunters and a lot of kids. But we partner with Callaway on,
Nice.
and they have the platform to deliver hunter education programs to distribute some of that content. And we have it, of course, on our website, YouTube channel, and then other partners as well. So really, really important to, welcome and invite new hunters into the mix.
Yeah, no, it's, I could see how it'd be more advantageous for a new hunter, because if you're a new hunter, you're probably not jumping straight to like buying tree stands and putting tree stands up. I do feel like that's a bit more of a, not a 101 thing, but
Right.
As long as you get over the education gap of like, what is a saddle? How do I use it? Is it safe? Am I,
Right.
Can I do it?
Is it comfortable? Right.
Yeah. This is something I can do, which you guys are doing a good job educating. Then certainly that is like probably the first thing you do. And then it's like, all right, well, and especially if you don't own property, like you're not going to go buy tree stands.
Right.
And yeah, by the way, we should mix in some Land Trust properties into your series and have people show up, to some private ground and do that too. But yeah, Land Trust is certainly, we see it all the time where whether it's kids or adult onset hunters, like it's such a more approachable way to go when you have private, exclusive access to some private ground for a day, a couple days, a week, whatever it might be, where you're not stressed about, other people being there because you don't know anything as a new hunter and you're carrying around a deadly weapon. And, there's just a lot that we as hunters who've been hunting our whole life don't really think about because it's just been natural to us. So, so they definitely can both work together in that way. I don't know. Let's talk. I heard you kind of mention it earlier, the hunting market. I've written about this a little bit, but since I started this company in 2019, there was articles like hunting's on the decline. And, again, I've written about this kind of parsing it out because we actually know whether hunting's on. It's not like, we're guessing at it. everything that was always cited, all the articles that cited, it was like a 2016 U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service survey, right? So they surveyed 1,600 people. It's a survey. And they extrapolated the data from that, and it was like, the world is the sky's falling, the hunting's dying, and all this stuff. Well, it's like, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service also just gives you exact sales data of hunting licenses for every state back to 1952. So the receipts. And when you look at the receipts, hunting has been incredibly stable for the last 20 years. It goes between 15.5 to 16 million, licenses and stuff sold. So I don't know. It's just interesting to hear that. Again, you've raised capital in this kind of hunting space. You have investors, and do you still feel like we hear that the hunting is in decline? Because I did when I was raising money years ago when I started this.
Yeah, we do hear that, but for the savvy investor, they know that it represents an incredible opportunity, because like the other businesses I've been in my whole career, it's a passion sport. People will, in good times and bad, they're going to play golf, they're going to hunt, they're going to ride, they're side by sides, right? These are passions. People, it's crazy. I remember, I was earlier career when I was with Callaway Golf, and when people would have a new driver on order, it was like they were waiting for an organ transplant.
Yeah, totally.
It was as if their life depended on it, right? Yeah. And so we take that really seriously. We had an Army captain in here the other day. We have a little retail space at our headquarters here in Columbia, Tennessee, and he was passionate. He brought his gear in with him. He had all the Tethrd gear, and he had been using it, and he wanted to talk about every little modification he made and every aspect of his gear. We don't recommend the modifications, by the way. We recommend you use the gear as we indicate. But he was just passionate. He had driven 400 miles to get here, and he just wanted to share the ins and outs of his gear and how he's been supporting us from the beginning. And he wanted to try and buy some stuff of ours that's new that we haven't even launched yet. So nice. People are passionate about their gear. They're going to find ways to invest and continue to do their passion. And not only has hunting been stable, it kind of got a shot in the arm with COVID. Mm-hmm. And so what we've seen is there are more hunters today than there were in 2019 before COVID, right? Yep. And then there are subsegments that are growing, like saddle hunting, for example, and archery as a subset of the bigger hunting market. And those are the areas, obviously, that we play in and we're particularly excited about. I think it's like the other enthusiast areas that I've worked in my career. If you make it enjoyable, you make it fun, where people want to do it. And in hunting, they need to find success. And if we can give them tools and advice, access to a great experience, they're going to come back. And so it's incumbent upon all of us to do that.
There was a special hunting report that I forget which shop put it out. I could probably link it. We'll link it in the show notes. But it was a 2023 hunting report. And, when you talk about passion, if you're a hunter, it's part of your identity. You're like, hey, I'm a hunter, right? If you meet another hunter, it's like you whip your phones out and you spend 30 minutes showing each other. It's just like the thing that you think about. And it really showed through in the data. We extrapolated the data out in that special hunting report. There's something like 200 million hunting trips taken in 2024 by hunters. The amount of hunters that took 8 to 20 hunting trips in a season was incredible. So it's just this thing that we think about all the time. We identify as, we buy gear as. It's not a commodity mindset. It's not like lodging or something else it's just we're going to go spend a bunch, ask any of our, wives or husbands who, are married to people who love to hunt. We spend money on gear. We spend money and time on these passions. So it's not just, there's 15 to 16 million hunters in the US, but it's like the frequency of engagement is immense. And the amount of hunters that said they traveled to like 3 or more states hunting. Like, think about that.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Like, we're just, turkey season's happening right now, and we've got turkey hunters on land trusts that have hit like 6 states. And they're just doing these. I wish, my wife would let me do that, and my wife's side would let me do that. It's not the case, but that you don't find that in a lot of other things other than these passion verticals.
That's right. And people are talking about macroeconomy and consumer confidence and spending. Yet I can cite just as many examples as you can of people that are going to multiple states hunting turkeys.
Oh, yeah.
One of our founders, Greg Godfrey, he and his dad are doing the World Slam. So
nice.
They were just back from Yucatan Peninsula, and he's on his way. Yeah. So he's oscillated. 4 down. You guys oscillated on the books. And so he's having a great time with his dad doing that. But while we tend to the business here, he's totally having fun.
Well, it's and the thing is too, I'm not talking about wealthy people. Like, right. I was just talking another episode that I just recorded. I mean, he's a retired Southside Chicago cop, and he's just like banging out his U.S. slam. And
that's great.
It's like, it's not that they're like independently wealthy like millionaires. These are just like, most people that use land trusts are blue collar dudes and gals who just love this thing, and it's where they put their time and money and passion and effort into.
That's right. If they have to save up to go on a hunting trip, they're going to do it. They're going to make sacrifices. One of my good buddies is a school teacher in Minnesota. He always jokes that he's a humble school teacher, but he's going to find a way to hunt multiple states. He
beg, borrow, steal.
Borrow, steal. He saves his nickels and dimes to get the latest gear. He's a saddle hunter like me, and has been from the beginning. And it is a passion. Some would say an obsession.
Yes.
And people will let lots of other things fall by the wayside before they walk away from hunting.
Yeah. I always say, like, our people are, again, blue collar, middle class. They're not buying a Mercedes. They're not going to Disneyland. Like, this is where they spend their treasure.
That's right.
Okay. So we kind of, again, May 6th, I mentioned it. We're sitting here. I don't know when this will be released in the next few weeks, but we're in a post-tariff world. You're a gear manufacturer. So it's interesting for me. I run a digital platform. Tariffs mean nothing to me, really, from my business perspective. Thankfully, I'm thankful for that. But, I was just with a bunch of guys running gear companies over the weekend in Kentucky. And, one of them, who actually, Duckworth makes all their stuff in the U.S. So a company like that was like, hey, we're sitting pretty right now.
Yeah.
But then there's other guys there who as well that were, manufacturing stuff, whether it be in China or in Vietnam or other countries, where it's like, whew, this is a new thing. So I don't know. I'd love to hear your perspective as somebody who's been at gear companies and is now running a gear company. Like, how has this kind of affected you, and what's your perspective on it?
Sure. Well, it's taken a lot of our time, especially lately. First, let me say that I appreciate what the administration is trying to do, to onshore jobs and to correct a trade imbalance. Yep. Our challenge is the severity and speed with which the issue's being addressed. So we anticipated this. I mean, it was no secret, right? In the first administration.
Trump's been talking about tariffs since 1986. He's been talking about
his whole career.
Yeah.
And so we were proactive in 2024. We got more favorable terms from some of our vendors. We took pricing strategically. And, we make a fair number of products here in the U.S. too. So nice. Our high-end saddles made in Fort Worth, Texas. Awesome. We have a great relationship there. We have a company in Pennsylvania that does our platforms, some of our platforms, and they have a facility in India. We've got our team is here in Tennessee. So we're obviously a U.S.-based employer. But for some of our product categories, the options are very limited on
Yeah.
where you can get, cost effective gear made. And when we decided to go into wholesale, that put more pressure on our supply chain in that we have to leave a little margin for us and our retailer. So you
Right.
got to find lower cost sourcing. And so, yes, we do source some of our products and some components in China. So this reciprocal tariff that's just 145%, it's crushing. And so we are working with those suppliers and getting creative, getting some cost sharing. We continue to accelerate some of the discussions with alternative sources. You just can't turn on a dime to do that. We've gotten partnership from our wholesale partners on taking some direct shipments because we anticipate congestion at the ports in that things have been on a standstill, right?
And then something's going to give, and then everyone's going to be gold rushing to, totally.
That's right. Right. So, we're going to have to take a little bit of price. We've been told, we'll see what comes through in the market, but we've been told that a lot of the tree stand manufacturers and makers of climbing stands are going to double their prices.
Wow.
We're talking more like 10%.
What an opportunity for you guys. That's awesome.
It should be. And we're going to take a hit in profitability, but we've tightened our belt. So we've looked at non-discretionary spending and made some cuts. So we're having to be a lot smarter about how we manage the business,
right?
And just navigate the situation as best we can.
Yeah, look, I mean, the camp I was at over the weekend, I would say very safe to say all of us support the current administration, and it's kind of to your sentiment, like, hey, we all agree with the sentiment of reshoring manufacturing and not being so dependent on these other places. But yeah, you can't snap your fingers and have a factory overnight. I'm drinking a Outsider. Those guys are cool guys. There's not a single place to manufacture this type of product in the U.S. And
right,
so then comes the conversation of, well, are there other things that could be done for U.S.-based companies who employ U.S. citizens, whether that be tax credits or something to say like, hey, we are making the efforts. Can we have some reprieve from some of these things that we're facing right now? And so that was some of the conversation that was happening over the weekend. Again, for people who are very much aligned, generally speaking, with the underlying goal of it, but it's like, I can't turn a barge on a dime.
Right. And we've engaged our local representatives to seeking potential solutions, and pledged our support again for what they're trying to accomplish. Just seeking a little relief or time, or a little bit of both to navigate the situation. But if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. And we see an opportunity, to your earlier point, a market share opportunity in this climate.
Yeah, I mean, if tree stands are going to double in price, it certainly seems like a nice little marketing campaign for you to educate people on the options, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Where do you think, let's talk the hunt space specifically, because that's where you're operating. I mean, we do more than hunting at Land Trust, but hunting is certainly, 80-85% of the business. What do you think is going to be the opportunity the next 5 years, let's call it? Like, I've had a few other guests kind of on this Outsides Insider series who have, they're kind of performance marketers or affiliate. And we've talked a lot of the challenges of the fact that we in the hunt space can't really advertise very much digitally. So, Meta and Google, now there has been a vibe shift with the new administration. And, I know someone that was brought back to Facebook to work on kind of 2A and hunt stuff. And hopefully we see some loosening of that. But I mean, for a while there, you couldn't show a bow, like let alone a
Yeah.
dead animal. But like if that bow in your background was in a photo, it was like flagged,
Right.
couldn't advertise. So hopefully we see the marketing channels loosen up from a digital perspective. But like, I'm running a digital business, you're running a gear business. I have a perspective that we really there's an opportunity to unify, around the customer itself, himself, herself, because we all touch them at different stages of the journey. And I posit that there's, hunters think in trips. And I steal this from Glenn Vogel, who's the CEO of Bookings. He's like, people traveling think in trips. They don't think in flights and hotels and rental cars. And it's like, no, I want to go to Italy. And yes, I need these other things to go to Italy with my family, but that's what I want to do. And hunters are very much the same way. You probably have 3 to 5 trips in your mind that are at different stages of planning. And, one might be this weekend for a turkey and one might be in 2 years for something else, right? And so, I'm curious, what is the opportunity from your perspective if we look at trips? You have mapping, you have research, from a hunting perspective, you've got e-commerce and gear, you've got trips and guided trips, unguided trips, et cetera. I don't know, like, do you see stuff on the horizon where some of these things can be married?
Totally. And I think that MeatEater has a lot of the components right. Like, I do think there is a platform play. Nobody has truly kind of cracked the code. And I think that if someone could create a platform, for lack of a better description, that allows, enables to meet hunters where they are, like, and gives them a comprehensive solution. I think there would be power in that. And we've talked maybe a little bit about it, like what a platform could look like. And, but I agree with you that it would be that the way people think. I think about my September elk hunt, my September archery elk hunt, and I have a gear list that I keep updated and current. So gear is a part of it, but it's the trip, the access, the tags. Like, wouldn't
the
it
maps,
be great?
The research.
Yeah, if I could do it all through one platform or one place or one solution, and where I could get my gear and or get gear recommendations that are tied to where I'm hunting. If I don't have as much familiarity with that area, I think, like I said earlier, whether it was in golf or in hunting, we need to focus as the stakeholders in leading this industry. We need to focus on making the experience a positive one for all people who participate. And, it's like we've got so many of these uninformed, voices out there that disparage hunting because they don't understand it. Right. And they think it's something that it's not. And we have to amplify the voices like Granella and others who represent the activity in the best possible light, which is how most of us identify it, And the fact that we're going into this fight with an arm tied behind our back and the limitations we have in digital advertising, where we want to educate and inform on what's great about hunting and why we should all, the whole, the role we play in conservation and all the good things going on in the space. And we're really limited. So I think that embedded in there is the opportunity to make it a great experience for all that want to participate and to share that story. Because, the fact is, even though hunting is stable and healthy, there are a heck of a lot more non-hunters than hunters in North America. And all we need is the non-hunters to be advocates and supporters. They don't have to join us. They just don't need to be against us. Neutral to positive.
Neutral to positive.
That's all we need.
Yeah.
That's right.
On that point, obviously MeatEater as a platform has done a lot for, I think, getting people to neutral to positive, and that's really important. But you have I think you've got guys like Robbie at Blood Origins who does a great job. He does stuff here in the States, but he does stuff, around the world. He's a great storyteller and advocate. And I would take those much more at the intellectual level, right? I think both of those are kind of like appealing to the more intellectual non-hunters. But I also look at people like Sydney Wells at Barstool, and she's built a huge audience. Like they've built a huge audience, just showing it's funny because I take Barstool people who are just like city kids, who like sports or whatever, and they're like, you watch her take them out and to go fish or hunt or do fun outdoor stuff they would have never done before.
Right.
And I think that's a really important voice too. It's not over intellectualizing it.
Right.
So you kind of need to hit that content funnel of where people are in their lives. I don't think a Barstool kid's sitting there worried about the Botswana elephants, but there are people that definitely care about that. And Robbie makes badass content for them, Right. But some people just need to see hey, this is a fun thing we can do. And it's enjoyable. You can do it with a group of friends, and it's a whole new thing that we can go do. Because I lived in cities. I lived in a bunch of the big cities. I was selling advertising, and the groups of friends I had, the only thing you did was drink and eat in the city. That was it. There was no hobbies or anything like that. So I do think that it's good to marry the content to the maybe certain types of consumer, and I think they do a really good job of just showing hey, this is a really fun thing to go do with your friends. And they're, maybe you matriculate into and it's conservation oriented, all this other stuff, but you don't have to beat people over the head with that too. Yeah,
no, I couldn't agree more. My son, who is a freshman at Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, is the typical Barstool. He's got Barstool flag in his dorm room, right?
Yeah.
And I dragged him along on a walleye fishing trip in Canada a couple of years ago. He is an athlete. He loves hockey and golf and all these sports. And he didn't orient around hunting at an early age like I did. I took him and he'd go, but he didn't love it like I did.
Right.
But I remember him remarking on this walleye fishing trip in Canada, Dad, this is way more fun than I thought, and he is that Barstool kid. And it's just a matter of opening their eyes to it. And when they see it from, like you said, not an influencer that's overly intellectual and it's very accessible, right? So it's, that looks cool. And that's we did talking about content reaching that demographic. We did what we called a tagged out tour, where we took a bunch of 17 and 18-year-old kids and we put them on a bus traveling the country whitetail hunting. So a little bit like the hunting public kind of thing.
Yeah.
Man, we still get comments from it, and we didn't get a ton of viewership, but it reached a demographic that was really kind of intrigued and that maybe hadn't been reached before. And as we welcome new young hunters into the space, they're not used to hunting from a ladder stand or a climber.
Right. So
we're introducing saddle hunting in the hopes that it gives them an edge and makes them more successful. It keeps them safe. And they don't know any different, right? They think that maybe saddle hunting's been around forever.
Fresh audience.
Yeah.
No preconceived notions.
And they're passionate about it. They get way into it too, just like other sports and pastimes.
All right, we just want to take a super quick break to do our Field Notes highlight this week. If you don't know, Field Notes is a cool product that we have on Land Trust where you can follow properties and landowners of those properties will post updates about what's going on there. So it's almost like your personalized scouting feed to see what's going on properties all over the country here on Land Trust. So this week we've got some great ones. One that kind of caught my eye this morning as I sat down is obviously this is a really cool one about elk here on La Dolce Vita Ranch in, I think it's Guthrie, Colorado. I actually don't know how to pronounce that. So you can see we've got a video that the landowner has posted about some elk here. Sorry if you're not watching. And then just nice herds of elk kind of popping all over the property, which is really cool, coming down to the water and feeding. And then, of course, at the top of the feed was a beautiful turkey killed out in Forsyth, Montana. And the landowner talking about that guest already booking to come back next year. So if you haven't checked out Field Notes, highly recommend it. It's just a cool feed to scroll through. You can find it at landtrust.com/field notes. Or when you're on landtrust.com, you'll see Field Notes up in the upper right-hand corner. You can click on that. Any properties that you're interested in, I would just suggest following them. And it's kind of like a social style, Instagram style feed. However, as you can tell, there's lots of pictures of dead birds and animals and guns and all this stuff that you won't see on the other social platforms. They don't really like these things, but we do. Again, it's like your personalized scouting feed. So you can follow any property on Land Trust across the country, and you'll get notified when those landowners post cool updates. And those updates can be, 5-star experiences, photos and videos of success, game camera photos and videos, updates from the landowner on when they might be harvesting, weather updates, all kinds of stuff. So a really cool free tool for you to use and stay up to date. All right, back to the show. One of the things that's happening right now is one of the big companies in the hunting space is purportedly on the market. We've been, had people coming inbound and talking private equity shops and banks and stuff like that. What's been your experience? Are you seeing, it's good that this company is in market and it's at a healthy venture scale valuation. So it's kind of like making people pay attention to hunt in a way I haven't seen in the almost 6 years I've been doing this. I mean, have you seen that too? What are the capital pools looking at right now? Do you think hunting is gaining some notoriety or attention? Or
I think so. I mean, you think about why the Chernin Group initially invested with Steve and MeatEater is they saw the numbers. And the numbers are significant. We were talking about it earlier on how much hunters spend. We have a really stable group of passionate hunters, and they spend a lot of money each and every year.
Yeah, lifetime value is what's the lifetime value of it? I started hunting when I was 3. I'll probably hunt till I die. So hopefully that's many years from now. It's it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And so the numbers are there. And I think if you can get past, again, some of the sentiment from those who are uneducated toward it, I think that we'll continue to get interest. But I like seeing companies like that on the market generating interest. We've seen, GSM trade multiple times, and at some stage, the investors of MeatEater will take that out into the market.
Sure.
And that's good. I mean, the more kind of successful transactions we can see in the space, the better, because it'll only heighten the awareness for the investor community and give us some comps for the activity, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that was kind of the conversation, again, with a handful of the folks I was with this last weekend is there's a really interesting moment in time right now for people running these businesses. There's a vibe shift, obviously, with the new administration, but also that in tandem with some of these companies going to market at pretty attractive valuations. I do think we're in an interesting moment in time for this specific category, for the kind of hook and bullet, and I would say 2A as well.
Yep.
You saw, Don Jr. and Dusty and Omid doing the, $150 million grab-a-gun deal. So these are things that 4 years ago probably you would not have seen happen.
You're right. We had some activity pre-COVID, right? From
Vista was doing
Outdoors.
Stuff.
Yep. And then there was this COVID boom and a little bit of activity, but then there was this trough following COVID. Now that that's behind us, and as you said, with this new administration, I think it is a pretty good moment in time for those in our space. And I expect more activity than we've seen in more than a handful of years. We know there's money on the sidelines ready to be put to use, right? And this, I think, is an attractive space.
For sure. Do you have any contrarian perspectives that you want to share? I always take a contrarian perspective, but I always am curious if other people do too.
Everybody is talking doom and gloom right now with the consumer sentiment. And as I said earlier, we see it as an opportunity, not just as a share gain. I think that sometimes what happens in a climate like this is it becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and that's all you hear. And so we almost unwittingly convince consumers to pull back and stop spending, even if nothing's changed in their world. So I think we need to be careful. Again, back to the tariff situation, I think perception's reality to some extent. And so just some good news there, because even if like the China tariff gets reversed tomorrow, some damage has been done.
Yep.
Right. So we're going to see a backup of ships trying to get into port, and we may see empty shelves. The longer it goes, the higher likelihood that that's the case, and it'll create more pressure for small businesses like ours, and I'm afraid that we'll see layoffs even more than we've seen. We've seen kind of the tip of the iceberg, but I think there's a potential for it to go sideways. But I think if the situation is addressed, I think you've heard from both sides that the current reciprocal tariffs are unsustainable.
Yeah, they're not going to be sustainable.
And so the sooner that gets addressed and we can come to terms, it'll be viewed as a win. And I do think that there is an opportunity under this administration for this so-called golden age.
Yeah,
I really do.
I do too.
We just, some of the tools that have been deployed have been kind of blunt instruments. And I'm not going to teach Trump anything about negotiation. But those blunt instruments sometimes come with repercussions. And the economy is pretty sensitive. So I think we're going to be working through that here for a little bit of time.
Well, whenever there's a winnowing like this, I mean, 2008, you look at some of the biggest success stories in the tech side of things, companies like Airbnb and Uber, et cetera, those were all post-financial crisis, right?
Yeah.
And so the companies that get built and can survive through these things where, other companies are kind of weeded out, those are the companies that often do very, very well. And so, it can be kind of shitty. And, I was talking to buddies the other day who's laying some people off, and we've had to do that and doesn't, good people, but it's just like, hey, this is the reality of where, the businesses, the macro, all that stuff. Like if you can button it up and get lean and just settle in and grind through it, I think those are the companies that are going to come out on top.
Yeah. And stay the course. One of the things that I mentioned that I talked about, like alignment at MeatEater. Yeah. So one of the tools we've deployed here at Tethrd is EOS, which is the entrepreneur operating system, right? One of the exercises you go through is you create a 10-year target. And over my career, I've seen companies that I worked for that fell into the trap of short-term thinking, right? Managing quarter to quarter to meet the market's expectations. Right. And when you do that, it's just a really slippery slope, and it doesn't yield good things. But if you stay focused longer term and take a longer term approach, and you're patient and stay on your course, good things happen. You talk about the financial crisis, and Polaris is a great case study, because going into 2008, when Scott Wine joined, the stock price was like at $8. And they stayed the course through that period and continued to invest in R&D, where some of their big competitors like
Pulled back.
Yamaha
Yeah.
and Honda pulled back, right?
Yeah.
And so when they came out of it, they grew share. While I was there, stock was $158 from
Wow.
$8, right?
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about the wild share gains and success they had as a result of staying the course and thinking long term. It's another prime example that I lived, and so yeah, we actually created a 5-year target to create 1 million saddle hunters. So we're still
Love
in the
it.
early innings of this
Yeah.
journey, but we're having a lot of fun and success, doing what we love. So it's been great.
Well, I got to say, I still have not. Let's caveat this. I've sat in one tree stand, right? So I grew up bird hunting
Right.
in the deserts of California with bird dogs, and upland hunting is still like a very near and dear thing. So I didn't even start big game hunting until 2016 or something like 2015. But I was always in the West. I started my first big game hunt was in Colorado.
Right.
Then I moved to Montana. So tree stands are just not as much of a thing in the West. Spot and stock. It's very hard for me to sit still because I've only done that. So I sat in a tree stand once, and I'm still kind of that newbie. So I have not done a saddle, but I do want to try it. And again, even for my business model, the more saddle hunters there are, they're going to be more successful on more properties, like on something like land trust, because you're going to show up to a property. And depending on what the weather's doing, and look, our landowners are really helpful. They tell people how the property works and all that. And often they will have stands or box blinds or whatever. But if you have someone who shows up with a saddle, I mean, they get to kind of approach it how they want.
Yeah.
And who never knows what the weather's going to be doing. It rained the whole weekend where we were, and it totally changes everything. So I'm for it. I got to try it. I've never done it, but that's not saying much because I've only sat in one tree stand anyways.
Yeah, no, but I'd love to. Next time you get to Nashville, get you here at our headquarters. I have a buddy who's a bow hunter in Michigan. He's a radiologist, and he was in town for a conference, and I invited him down, and he'd never saddle hunted either. He's only hunted from a tree stand. He's had a lot of success. He's shot some really nice bucks, but I got him in here, and he was like a kid at Christmas. He was on we've got a demo tree, and he was on that, checking it out. And he's like, okay, set me up, get me all. So he's got an order that he emailed in, and he's ready to go. But I'd love to do the same with you, because it is a little different looking, and people are generally, they start with apprehension or intimidation. But it's the same journey I went through. I was like, let me see if I can do this. And I tried it once, and it's like, yeah, this is great. This is no problem.
Well, now I live in Alabama, so it's going to be whitetail hunting on, in timbered properties is going to be what I do mostly. So I got to get it figured out and become from a kind of shitty hunter to maybe a marginally better hunter.
Well, and I think that because what you said is absolutely true. Like those who are booking on land trust, booking hunts, there isn't a better methodology than saddle hunting. And
Totally.
And so we should look at how we can activate that more than we have. I think it's a great opportunity, because I want, me, I've been a fan of land trust. I've booked hunts. I've booked land to shed hunt and had some great experiences. So I want to help promote your model, and if we can make, in some small way, contribute to hunters having a more successful hunt or a more successful day by the gear they have, then let's find ways to enable that.
Yeah, man, that's the goal. Well, Dan, I appreciate you. I know we're coming up here on time. Thank you for coming on. Tell the folks where they can kind of learn more about Tethrd and where they can follow you guys at, all that.
Yeah. So Tethrd.com it is kind of the starting point.
And spelled, by the way,
Tethrd.
Yes.
So, yeah, you can kind of see it. We did not buy the second vowel. But yeah, Tethrd.com. And like I said, you can also see the gear at your local archery shop or or favorite retailer. But Tethrd.gear is a good starting point for or YouTube channel is Tethrd Nation, and where you can learn all about saddle hunting and how to do so effectively and safely.
Great. And we'll throw links in the description to your social and that kind of stuff. And then follow Dan on LinkedIn just as an individual, kind of business leader too. So it's the only social media I have. I haven't had social media personally since 2015, but you can follow Dan there. We'll put links to him there as well. So appreciate you coming on, Dan, sharing a bunch of insights, definitely interesting perspective, someone who's held all the different types of roles you've had. So I appreciate you sharing the knowledge.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you having me on.
Hey, I want to give a big thanks to Dan for joining us and bringing such an insightful perspective to the conversation. And to all our listeners out there, if you enjoyed the episode, do us a favor. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a rating review, share it with your buddies or other people you think might be interested in the content. It really does help us grow the podcast and keep bringing great guests like Dan on. You can check out more of what Tethrd is doing over at tethrdnation.com and follow Dan on LinkedIn to stay in the loop with his work and his thoughts. We'll drop those links in the description for you. You can follow the Land Trust Podcast on Instagram at landtrust_hunt to stay up to date with the new episodes. You can also watch the episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Hey, if you haven't already, head to landtrust.com and create your free account. Whether you're looking to book your next hunt, take your kids out fishing, or maybe even host people on your land by being a landowner on Land Trust, you can do that all at landtrust.com, and it's totally free to join. Thanks for tuning in to the Land Trust Podcast and this episode of Outsides Insiders. We'll catch you on the next one.